My main motivation for psychiatry, of all the divisions of medicine or the various kinds of medicine people practice, I strongly believe psychiatry is the one where you get to hear people's problems the most, uh, and where you could be able to provide a lot of compassion to them or empathy. It's okay not to be okay. All you need to do is seek help in the right place. Whether when you have those weird thoughts, don't think that you are just weird. You can call for help.
Sometimes the goal is to just put one foot in front of the other. The goal is just to make it to through the month or even through the day.
Adapting means you understand that this is a difficult situation, but I will not let this situation define me in a negative way. Advancing is moving forward despite those difficult situations. Your story is being rewritten every day, and the pen is in your hand. So you've got to tell yourself, always take one small action every day in the right direction of what you want for your life.
Welcome to this episode of How Do You Divine, where we explore the words that drive our lives and how it complements or conflict with our spirituality. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Dr. Wole Babatunde, psychiatric physician, public health expert, and researcher whose career embodies what it means to adapt with purpose in medicine, leadership, and in life.
So much, Sanika, for having me today. I'm excited to be here today, and thanks for the warm introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like you have adapted in life in various seasons, right? From your migration story to becoming a physician and also overcoming trauma and grief and heartbreak in various aspects of your life. So, before we get into all your research and your expertise, can you please give the audience a little bit about Wale, where are you from, and where we find you today?
Thank you so much. That's a good way to start. I'm grateful that I'm where I am today. My name is Wole, born in Nigeria, some thousands of miles away, I believe, from the US. Um, Grew up from humble beginnings, had some very traumatic childhood experiences, which we are going to talk more about later. The loss of my mom when I was 7, the loss of my dad when I was 13. And after that happened in Nigeria, it was a big struggle to complete high school, to college, but somehow with a lot of grace to adapt and to advance, I was able to get through medical school in Nigeria, worked a little bit in Nigeria. Then I saw the need to transition to the United States in 2014 to learn more. I love to learn, to read, and I came in for my PhD in epidemiology, University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina, and completed that. Two big goals I had while coming to the US was to finish my PhD for help me with research, and then secondly is to do my residency in psychiatry, mainly born out of a zeal for the things I have experienced with my life growing up. A lot, and I just felt I wanted to do psychiatry in the US where I will have the opportunity to touch people uniquely uh, and with compassion because of I've been through with my life. So able to do residency 4 years, completed in June this year, and I'm happy to say that I'm a psychiatrist in the US today, and I see patients regularly, and I'm able to help as much as uh, I have the grace to be able to help them.
Nice. And just your ability to adapt in these various
Thank you. Yeah.
environments, right? Different countries, different levels of education and challenges to become a physician today. I'm going to ask the first question is why psychiatric
Yeah.
versus other disciplines in medicine? Why did you, is it your trauma that drew you to psychiatric medicine? Why
Yeah. Yeah,
that
and
line?
that's a wonderful question. I've had people ask me this question multiple times. And I remember when I interviewed for residency in psychiatry, It's one of the main questions in all of the interviews I had. It's one of the questions that everywhere I interviewed, they came, why psychiatry? We see your background from Nigeria, you're a physician, you did community medicine in Nigeria, and why psychiatry at this point? So it's a question I've had to answer many times. My main motivation for psychiatry is I tell people psychiatry, of all the divisions of medicine or the various kinds of medicine people practice, I strongly believe psychiatry is the one where you get to hear people's problems the most, and where you could be able to provide a lot of compassion to them or empathy. Not that you can't, of course, every other aspect of medicine can also hear that. But psychiatry is unique because most of our disorders are typically, there's always one big stressor that usually pushes it out. At times we have patients going through divorce and that just shatters their world, and at times they become depressed. At times we have patients going through very tough financial situations and difficulties, and I push them to drugs, and the drugs push them to other things. So those are the kind of things that I felt since both of my background in medicine, the trauma I experienced as a child. I felt it's a great thing for me to be able to experience and hear about the trauma people go through, and I can empathically and be able to provide compassionate care to them.
What do you think is one of the misconceptions about psychiatric physicians versus therapists?
Generally, there's a lot of stigma surrounding psychiatric care, even both for patients and for we health care for them. The reason being, people feel, because it has to do with people's mind. And, at times we deal with very serious mental illnesses. Although I tell people like maybe half of our patients or even more than that don't have very serious mental illness like schizophrenia or somebody like, so people easily attribute stigma to it.
Mhm.
And the same way has been stigmatized in the general population for people, we doctors also experience the stigma too. They feel we are a bit weird. And because we are dealing with people that are struggling or maybe, with mental health illnesses. But that's not the case. Most of the people that we treat in psychiatry are, normal human beings that go to normal job, live normal life. So it's not like, of course, we have those very sick people that might fit that category of like being very, very sick, and but just like every specialty, honestly, I would think just picking up a number, maybe up to 90%, they're just people like you and I. Like, yeah, they are just going through
Yeah.
stressors, maybe they're just depressed, they have some anxiety, they have some PTSD in their lives. It's making it difficult for them to function at the best that they can. So I think that's the main reason why there's a lot of stigma, and people feel that psychiatry is a weird profession, but it's not, and we try to normalize and let people know it's okay not to be okay. All you need to do is seek help in the right place. Whether, if you are hearing voices, for example, that are not there, or seeing things that are not there, whatever it is that people are experiencing, we want them, or maybe we are feeling suicidal, at times people feel like killing themselves, those are things we deal with all the time. We tell people to seek help. Pick up your phone and call. We have the hotline numbers. Or worst case scenario, call 911. They will direct you to the right place, or 988, the suicide hotline numbers. Call a friend. Tell family members so that you can get the help you need. Don't bottle it up. So every time I have the opportunity, I want to educate people like, when you have those weird thoughts, don't think that you are just weird. You can call for help, and maybe one of us will be available to help you.
Help you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think many people try to adapt to that sense of normalcy that you talked about, right? Where they're normal people like you and I, but some of those challenges aren't, they don't wear them, right? They're not forthcoming. They're kind of hiding them and pushing them down. How have you adapted from trying to have people be more open to the concept of seeking psychiatric help versus therapy, or do you get referrals from therapy? How do you adapt to that changing landscape? Because, like you said before, as a society, we're becoming more and more acceptable to therapy being a normal thing to do. Just like you go and get your teeth cleaned every 6 months, every 4 months, you should probably check in with the therapist just to make sure you're well, just like we would if, we broke our arm, we would go to the doctor. Do you see a change in the landscape where people are adapting more to, let's just say, leaning into therapy and you're referred from there, or leaning right into psychiatric assistance?
Actually, therapy works hand in hand with psychiatrists because uh, primarily a psychiatrist is trained to help you by providing medications that can help either with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, PTSD, and all of that. We are trained to help you by providing medication. A therapist is trained to talk through and give you coping skills. Both of them are equally important, especially, for example, in the landscape of depression. There's a lot of evidence that when patients combine both, uh, taking of medications, let's say on the left hand and on the right hand, seeing a therapist, when a patient combines both, specifically for depression, there's a lot of science that tells us that they do better than only medication or only therapy. So eventually, a therapist and a psychiatrist work hand in hand. And where I work, for example, doctors see the patients every day, therapists doctors see them every day. So because it's inpatient. So it's important to have both of that. And we tell patients, in fact, we are also trained in some therapeutic skills so that because if somebody tells you they have a lot of trauma, you just tell them, take this pill. You must also be able to use some of your therapeutic skills, which is the non-medical aspect, to empathize with them and to do a little bit. We train in a little bit of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or maybe acceptance and commitment therapy, or even just supporting them and telling them it's going to be okay. And you've been through some things in the past, and reaching forth back to them, you can also get through this one. So we're also trained in therapy to be able to use a little bit of it. So if we have 30 minutes encounter with a patient, you could just do therapy in 2 or 3 or 5 minutes, just a little bit to make the patient feel hard and to also empower them with coping skills that are different from medications. So ideally, therapy and psychiatrists work hand in hand to give a patient the best. And that's what I have, and I'm saying to everybody listening here that if you really need help, you can start with therapy alone. At times, therapy alone might just be okay, depending on the level of what you are dealing with. But if you need medication help, there's no harm in seeking both therapy and also seeking a psychiatrist here. For some of the stressors we deal with, therapy is just fine. We all need a little bit of it.
Yes. No, I love the way you outline that, right? Because it speaks to that fear aspect. How do you adapt to someone's fear of being medicated?
The biggest thing for us that we do every single day is at every time we educate people. Like I said, there's a lot of misconception, there's a lot of stigma, and people come into you with all of those thoughts. There's misconception about that specific diagnosis, and some of our disorders are loosely used in society to mean different things. So people come with all of this misconception. One thing we can do to adapt to them is to give them some level of education and tell them, this is what we think you are going through, and this is why we are thinking you are going through this. One thing we always do in adapting to their situation is let them know their unique situation and let them know the role that medications can play. Let them also know the role that therapy also can play. So they all play separate roles. And so educating patients and even letting them know, I call it a three-legged stool. So we have medication, we have therapy, we also have lifestyle. There are some things the patients who can do that is lifestyle that impacts mental health a lot. Exercise, for example,
Three-legged,
yeah,
come on.
so that's what I tell, and I always tell patients we have to do the three: medication, therapy, and lifestyle. Lifestyle comes talking about exercise, for example, is one lifestyle thing that you can do. There's a lot of science that a person experiencing depression, even just getting up and moving, walking 30 minutes every day or jogging or whatever you're able to do, just keeping it moving could go a long way to even get you out of the depression. For example, in the inpatient where I work, I tell patients, if you are here and the whole day you are lying down in bed, how do you want to get better? Even with the medication and with therapy, you've got to get up, go to group sessions, go to other places, move around, get puzzles, get books and read. And, there are just so many things we can do. But there are some people that are so sick that they just can't even get up and move. It's possible. At times the mental disorder could make it so crippling and so hard, or even impossible in some cases. Like some people we have catatonia where even they might not even move, they might not even eat for days. So that's different. There are ways to manage that one, but 90% of the time people are not that sick. So we tell them, get up, you can still get up on your own, you can still move around, you can still go to group sections, you can talk to people, stuff like that. So all of that is part of the adapting process that all of us have to keep, doing to adapt to the situations that we are. At times, people just don't know that some of these little things to matter to help them get over whatever mental health disorders they might have. I'm not saying that's the only thing that works, but definitely it's one of the three key things that I would always recommend every single patient. Exercise, diet, and some other taking good decisions for yourself. Looks like using substances could cause a lot of problem for some people. Before you get to a point where it's impossible for you to control it, at times just taking a good decision could be helpful.
Oh, I love that. And one of the key things that we talked about was this concept that people have that you must accept before you can adapt, right? And that's why I wanted us to explore the importance of adapting. We're slow to adapt because we feel there's a requirement of us accepting our situation first, right? And what I've come to learn is that acceptance is not necessarily a requirement. It is what it is. It would be nice if it's on the tray, but
Yeah,
otherwise,
yeah, yeah.
it would be nice. But I do feel the importance for individuals to adapt to their current season of life in order to elevate or even progress, right? Sometimes the goal is to just put one foot in front of the other. The goal is just to make it to through the month or even through the day. So talk to me about how you came to write the book and do your research around the importance to adapt to advance.
Yeah, so adapting the way I look at it, I talked about a lot in my book, Adapt and Advance. I see it as a way and like knowing that if there's a difficult situation, understand that this is difficult situation. And we all go through tough seasons at one phase or the other of our lives, and honestly, maybe multiple times in our lifetime. If you live long enough, you will experience things that you really don't like, and they will always
Yeah.
come. So when we experience those things, we need to understand that the reality of it, this is a difficult situation. It's not what I expect. Nobody, for example, I want to believe that generally no well-meaning person goes into a marriage because they want to divorce very soon. Or no well-meaning person goes to a school because they want to go and fail exams. No well-meaning person wants to have money so that they can lose it. For the most part, for most of us. So, but when some of these things happen, whether it's a divorce, it's failing an exam, or going through very difficult, challenging bit, it's unique for everybody. Adapting means you understand that this is a difficult situation, but I will not let this situation define me in a negative way. Advancing is moving forward despite those difficult situations. So in the book, I talked about my own personal life. Since I've been a child, I've always adapted and advanced and make progress. The whole idea is, when I lost my mother when I was 7 years old, lost my father when I was 13 years old, I had to take a decision at that point that I would not let these negative things decide my future. I will not let I don't want to get to the end of my life, whenever that is, and look back and all that I could say is because his mother died at 7 and his father died at 13. Unfortunately, his life was grounded to a stop and he could not make progress. So I had to tell myself, I've got to figure out a way to adapt to this situation. And I've got to figure out a way. Although I never really solved the problem at any time, you can't solve, you can't bring a dead person back. I never got to really solve the problem like the way I would have preferred it to be solved. And of course, there were many days I cried. I wish they could come back. The time I knew they weren't going to come back. So I had to find a way to like, okay, they are not back, and I have to deal with the financial fallout, for example. I always tell people when there are losses of family members, maybe people lose their parents, I always tell them the bigger loss is even not the bigger pain, the pain you feel when they told you or when it happened. The bigger pain is your everyday life where the role those people played, it becomes like a vacuum. When you wake up, you need to pay school fees and you realize, who do I go to talk to now about this? The things they provide you food, they provide you protection, they provide you shelter. When you wake up many days and you realize, wow, it's not like it used to be when I had this person. So I always tell them the real pain is coming. So don't waste all your emotional energy.
Don't crash out, as they say. Don't
Yes,
crash
it's
out
like
now.
buckle up for the difficult days ahead, which will be a fallout of it. And the same way with every other things that we experience, there are consequences to things that happen to us. So some consequences, you will deal with it every day, but you have to now make a decision. Do I want this to stop me from making progress in every other area of my life? Or do I want to make sure that with this pain in my life that keeps coming every single day, I remember my parents. Every single day, I remember the financial difficulty I'm going through or the unemployment. Will I allow that to be the defining thing in my life? Or do I want to rewrite my story? And like one of the things I wrote in my book is, your story is being rewritten every day and you hold the pen. Your story is being rewritten every day and the pen is in your hand. So you've got to tell yourself, I've got the pen in my hand. Find some things that have happened which maybe I didn't have a choice. They happen. And there's little I can do about it. But this pen in my hand, I will rewrite it to fit what I really believe is my purpose in life. So if you understand that you also hold the pen, you realize that the pain and the problem, they cannot stop you from adapting and advancing and making progress. That does not mean the pain has gone away 100%. In fact, there will be newer ones. So as we continue,
Your whole problem will evolve to a
there
new
will be new
problem.
ones. The more you solve a problem, newer ones will come up. That's how life, if we tend to really look carefully, not being pessimistic. I'm a very optimistic person. But I also know.
I like how you're saying it in terms of like the ability to adapt to the scenario as it sits,
Yes.
right? And just also being ready for problems to expand as well as them diminishing. I like the way that you say that it is always being rewritten, and tomorrow could be a great day and the day after that could be a worse day. But I like the way you're framing it. Today's pain is bad, right? Today's
Of course.
hard.
Of course.
That's not what you're saying. That you're not saying it's not hard. But what you're saying is that you have the ability to
Write it.
diminish and rewrite it as things move forward.
So,
How did you get to a scenario where you're saying, don't worry about accepting, adapt to where you are right now? And as someone who loves a deadline, I'm deadline oriented. I like things to flow and have a system. Do you think it is healthy? Look at me trying to get a little side work on that. But do you think it's healthy for people to put timelines to what it means to adapt? Opening up this conversation, I wanted our audience to be aware of what it means to adapt mentally and emotionally, but also what are the tools that they can give themselves. I love the three-legged stool that we talked about already, but we have people that overthink and that get paralyzed with procrastination. So tell me, when you were saying as an expert and a physician, should it be time-oriented? Should it be situation specific? Is there any general recommendations you can make?
Yeah, so in terms of timeline, I would say to some extent it's good. but also to some extent, it can be damaging. So we need to find the right balance for timelines. And, but I would say the word balance is very, very important. We need to find balance in everything that we do. Balance in terms of being flexible too. You can have a timeline. For example, I want to be a doctor at so time, I want to pass this exam. Like when I came to the US, I had everything outlined, like I'm going to do PhD 5 years, going to do residency, so forth. I didn't do it exactly according to.
You gotta own your culture. It's very Nigerian of you.
Well, I didn't achieve it exactly. For example, I think I wrote my PhD was going to be done in 3 years. Eventually, I did 5 years. But of course, I knew why I did 5 years, and it was for a good reason. Then I knew I
Yeah.
was going to do residency after that, but there was a 2 years postdoc, which I don't think I really planned for, which I did in between then. So I was still flexible enough to know that although I couldn't meet it exactly as planned, I still met it maybe 3 or 4 years later, and I'm okay with that. The same way, for example, I published my book. It's always been a dream in my heart. I didn't even know, at a point, I didn't even know where to put it into my life. It was just not possible. But when the time came like a spark, I knew this was the time to do it last year. And I was able to commit the last 7, 8 months of my residency. I could add it on to the other things I was doing without one affecting the other negatively. So flexibility is something I would say is very important. And even in psychotherapy, in psychiatry, some of the reasons some people end up with psychiatric disorders is because of their inability to be flexible. Some people are just
Ooh,
so late, and yes,
rigid.
there's some personality disorders that fit more into that box. Like they just have to do things certain ways. If you don't do it certain ways, it's going to create interpersonal problems for them. They're going to fight their spouses, fight their children, and everybody because the house has to just be clean this way. This has to be done this time, and all of that. But it's okay, we are different. But for such people, they need to understand that they need to work some flexibility into their life so that they don't like frustrate everybody around them and also frustrate themselves
Yeah.
too. But of course, we need some of it too. It's not like to say everybody should just live their life anyhow without any timeline and anything. Otherwise, nothing will be done. So, but we need to find that sweet spot of balance where we are able to set goals, but at the same time, know when some goals are never going to be achieved. There are some goals you might have that might just not be in us to achieve. Might be your children that will achieve it, and might be nobody will ever achieve it. So be
Yeah.
flexible enough to be able to take a U-turn if we have to, or move to the right a little bit if we have to, or move to the left a little bit if we have to. And all of that important to make us have a good and a balance. That would be the word for that. And I would say flexibility. Very, very important. I set goals every week, every month, every year. But of course, I change them as events unfold.
Be okay with moving the
Yes,
goalposts,
yes,
essentially.
yes, yeah.
So, given your background in medicine, public health, and research, have you had to adapt your approach when addressing global health disparities versus local community level health needs? Have you had to adapt?
Definitely, definitely. I would say adapting is just compulsory, just compulsory, and making progress in everything that we do. For example, one example that comes to my mind very readily, like I just told you, for example, my PhD I was desiring to make it 3 years. But I also wanted to get an NIH grant. It's an experience that I dreamt of before coming to the US. So it's one of the things I wanted to experience during my PhD. And there was this grant called F99/K00, which was the transition grant from PhD to postdoc. And you can only submit it in your third year. And then if it's funded, you can experience it in your fourth year and fifth year. So that makes the 4 year quite compulsory. If I had not gotten it, maybe I would have graduated earlier, but I applied, I was successful, it was funded. So that made year 4
Congrats.
and year 5 necessary. So that's an example of adapting to a situation. So I had to create time to do the work, and they also create time to finish the PhD aspect, and also create time to finish the postdoc aspect. It also gave me the opportunity to slow down, take a step back, and to do my board exams that I needed to get into residency in psychiatry later. Eventually, everything worked out for good, and I was able to get a grant, finish the 2 years PhD, 2 years postdoc, and then 4 years residency. Eventually, things tied up and things made sense. So that's one big example of me adapting to a situation, something I wanted, but wasn't going to happen the way I originally wanted it. Research is something you have to keep adapting all the time. Publishing your papers can be so tough. I remember the very first paper I worked on in the US for my PhD. I submitted it like 5 or 6 times before eventually different journals before it got published. So if you are not adapting or they give you recommendations, they tell you you can do this way, this is the better way to improve it. You've got to sit down again, work on it, adapt it, move it to the next journal again. And all of you have to keep doing that. There are some you get lucky, you submit once and you get published within a short time. There are some you have to keep working on and keep working on. But what they are trying to do is help you improve it, help you improve the science, and help you to come out with whatever is best for you and your findings. So at the end of the day, it all works well, but it's not easy. It's not easy going through those situations and going through those circumstances. But if you take a step back and you're like, what can I do differently to adapt and to advance in this situation where I found myself? Then there will always be ideas of what you can do to things moving forward.
Yeah. We've known how you adapt to complete your PhD, but how do you have to adapt to patients from Africa to America, right? You're in the South. How was that transition from vocabulary to approach to practice? Was that difficult to adapt to?
Not completely, but of course, there were a few challenges on the way, as usual. Like I always tell people, coming to the US, in Nigeria, we went to school in English. So English wasn't a problem for me at all. Elementary, middle, high school, college, everything in Nigeria was in English. We still had our languages, like I'm Yoruba. We had our languages, but at the same time, all of everything we went to school in was English. So it was easy. So I thought the English I understood would make things very communication-wise easy. But I realized in the US, it's not just speaking English, but, you might be speaking English and they won't know what you're saying because of the accent and the differences in that. So that was something I had to get used to dealing with. And so I had to look for creative ways. If you notice when I talk, I try to gesticulate a lot, so that people can use both my body language and also what I say to pick. So I think I did more of that. Another way I think I also adapted well was use words that are easy to pick and will not be misunderstood. If, for example, I want to ask you about what you do as your job, I'll say, what job do you do? I won't say, what work do you do? Job, work could mean many things. So I quickly had to figure out the things I will speak that people can easily know what I'm saying. Might not be figured out. Those are things which in maybe an American might not worry about. But
No, but I love that you're open to that journey of adapting for your patients, right? I think sometimes when we come into different situations, like even this conversation or any conversation with a stranger on the street, we have this subconscious sense of this is who I am. This is who I am. You get what you get. And I love that in this conversation, we're just amplifying, highlighting the importance of your ability to adapt to your environment, right? It's so important because sometimes the things that we're going through, both mentally and emotionally, is because we won't adapt.
Agreed.
It's because as people, we often get stuck in certain seasons of our lives. And while time has progressed and people around us has progressed and kind of move forward, we're still stuck in this situation and not adapting to where we are in that season of our life. Both from an environmental standpoint, I have an accent and I'm accustomed to transitioning because I occupy various spaces. I would think that the way I'm speaking now is an accent, right? It's a lot clearer, it's a lot slower. And then when I'm in Atlanta, they're like, "Oh, you talk like you from up north." Like, everyone has an accent to a certain extent, but I want us to be clear that it's not just about vocabulary and communication. It's about adapting to your environment, the way in which you progress. Like you said earlier, around being mentally and open to flexibility, adapting your situation. That can be in your professional life, in your personal life, on any goal and journey. And then I love that we're talking about this because as we adapt to, we live in unprecedented times for many different reasons, as well as coming from more unprecedented times with the pandemic. Like everything about this is not normal. And I think we chase this sense of normalcy because familiarity comforts us. Let's be for real, right? This is what's going to happen when I go here. It's comforting, right? And unfortunately, we can get stuck because we're searching for what is familiar and not necessarily take into account what we're losing for familiarity. How do you address that in your practice? Do you see people regressing because they're searching for what is more familiar versus what is best for them?
I think that's in human nature. You just describe what human nature is, but that's generally, except you do something specifically against the natural tendency of all of us is to stay with what is familiar. And that could be crippling and could make it really difficult for us to adapt and advance in life. For example, when I was living in Nigeria, one of the things some of my senior colleagues me was like, I'm going to an unfamiliar terrain, and some of them tried to discourage me, which is okay. I understand where they're coming from and I understand they mean well. But at the same time, I also understand that there are some things in me which I need to be in this environment to be able to pull out and to be able to do the best way I would really want it done. For my PhD, things I needed to learn, which I might not easily find around locally back home. So I think it's just normal. People tend to, we all want to stay in our comfort zones, if I can use that word. And nobody really wants
Yeah.
to step out into the unknown. It is scary, to go into the unknown at times. But if we're going to really adapt and advance, we must be willing at times, to test the waters and, to
Yeah.
go out of our comfort zones. And that's where I talk about learning too. I read books, one book every week. Learn new things, step into new things. And from the things you are learning, take new steps. Of course, be well informed, not just take new steps blindly. When I was coming to the US, I made calls regularly, people I know, people I don't know, asking questions. And I was taking notes. I still have the notebook with me now. So I came prepared and I understood what I was walking into. I knew, I would say, 80% to 90% of questions answered on how things can go. If I meet this challenge, what do I do? What's the next step? Fine, I didn't get all questions answered, but I got enough answered to help me take that leap of faith and to move, knowing that things will be okay, things will be all right. But of course, was it all easy? No. There were a lot of challenges. But if I stayed back in Nigeria too, there would have been a different kind of challenge, I'm sure. So,
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like comfort can be reassuring, but it can also be a prison. And I wanted us to explore the concept of adapting, not just in your professional life, but your personal life, right? That the ability and the desire to adapt will help you progress. And progression doesn't necessarily have to be upward, right? It can just be linear. But I feel like as people, we cannot identify what makes us happy in this season or what makes us feel whole and makes us feel well if we are unwilling to adapt. Forget accept. Forget what that is,
yeah,
right? Because it's like you said, you've had such a long traumatic journey that has put you in such a great place where you are now serving other people and helping them through their traumatic
yes,
experiences.
yes.
But one of the key aspects of how you've done that is by adapting to every season of your life. not letting go of what happened, not actually accepting it, right? Grief is hard,
It is.
but the ability to adapt. So, give me some tools that you think could help our audience adapt to this season in their
Yeah.
life.
So I will now summarize the 7 big tools I have in my book. Number one is meaning making. So when we go through traumatic situations or have challenging times, we should be able to make meaning. And I used Viktor Frankl's book on Man's Search for Meaning to come up with 3 main ways to make meaning. One is by serving other people. No matter what you are going through, if you have the mind to serve others, you will realize that by helping others, you are helping yourself. The second one is experiencing something or someone. It could be experiencing music, it could be experiencing somebody you love, whatever it is, that experience helps you to make meaning of the things that you are going through. And the third way, according to Viktor Frankl, is our attitude towards the problem. One of those that was in the concentration camp, and one of the things he said was, even right in there with all the pain and suffering, we still made time to enjoy the moon. Everybody still sees the moon in the sky at the night. It's not so. It's an attitude towards the problem very important, and that is very key. No matter what we are going through, understand that this pain has not come to stop you. This pain, you interpret the pain as preparation, not punishment. That's the way I look at it. Whatever circumstance that you have in your life that is traumatic and painful is preparing you for something bigger. That is the best attitude to have, towards it. And that you will know that there's another season after this one that is coming, that is going to be better, and that this will all make sense at the end. So those are the ways, to look at things when we are going through them. And then A is action, which, we've talked a little bit about this. When I say even for psych patients, we tell them exercise is important, eat healthy diet is important. Always take one small action every day in the right direction of what you want for your life. It could be something small. It depends on what you are dealing with. For some people, even getting up out of bed and taking a 10 minutes walk, maybe in your house or around the street, could just be all that you need to get through that day. For some people, it can be as small as that. But if you are, for some people, your action could be apply for college if you want to go to college, whatever you need to do. It could just be get up and go to your job. At times you wake up, you don't even feel like getting out of bed. you know, I
For
tell my
real.
patients at times, when they tell me they don't feel like, I say, at times I feel that way too. I wake up, I'm like, I wish today was a break when I could just stay home. But I still get out of bed and come to work anyways, because I know that
For it.
that
Push
action.
forward.
So all of us need to take actions. P is planning. We don't just achieve at a place we do not plan for. Like I told you, for like 2 years before I came to the US, I planned. I had these notebooks. I was calling friends that were in the US, calling senior colleagues, asking them questions. Every question I have, I will write it down. I will call people. I will ask 3, 4, 5 people. I will get different responses. I kept writing. So I was fully aware. So plan. So that, then I came in with my family. I'm like, if we all came in together, how are we going to survive? How are we going to cope? What are the options? What are the strategies? What do people do? So planning is very important. L is learning. And this is where I emphasize one book every month is what I encourage everybody to do. Look books that will stimulate you. If, for example, you are struggling in relationships, look for people who have succeeded in relationships, read their books and see what they are teaching. If you are struggling with academics or maybe finances, get books. I have books. I read one every week. I listen on audio. It helps us to adapt to situations. And I've read so many stories of people that I know that I don't have a special problem. People have had worse things than these, and they have gone
Ugh,
through it.
minimize anyone's pain.
Anybody's pain, but when you read other people's story of some things some people go through to be where they are, it's just reassuring that I know I might be going through something deep right now, but if XYZ could pass through this, like I'm reading one of the books I'm reading now is Tony Robbins' book on Money Master the Game, and he detailed how much poverty he had growing up and how dysfunctional his parents' family was. He said he had like 5 different stepfathers growing up. Like it was very traumatic growing up, and there was just so much poverty. But today he's a billionaire. So when I read stories like that, it assures me that no matter how bad things are, you can turn it around.
Yeah.
Responsibility now, what did he do? What can I learn from him? What can I borrow from his story to add to my own life to see how far I can go? I may not necessarily be where he is because we have different purpose, but at the same time, I can at least the best I can be for myself. So learning, very important. Alliance formation, you can't do life alone. That's why we are doing what we're doing now. I need you, and I need many other people to get to where I want to be in life. So you've got to work with other people. Then M is mission statement. I always tell everybody, have a simple mission statement. It could be something simple like to be a good mother.
Amen. I love that. I love the framework. I love the tools. It gives you an outline of how to adapt, how to move forward, right? And something that you said that I really, really enjoyed is the learning aspect. I deeply believe if I'm not growing, I'm dying. I'm a little sunflower. It's important for us to level the playing field. Unity, be in alliance, have people in your space and in your circle that don't all agree with you. You know, that you all don't need to see the world the same way, but their insight will help you grow. I love this. Wale, thank you so much for this conversation. You continuously are doing research to help the mental and emotional well-being of our community. You are practicing physician. Thank you so much for this time, for your knowledge, for your expertise. It's important for us to understand, the three-legged stool concept in our pursuit to be well human beings. And this is how do you divine adapt? Thank you.